Hi there, this is Nellie, Ordinary People, Saintly Souls. And in preparation of the time of Easter, or the celebration of Easter, I am reading scenes or summarizing scenes for you from the book, The Poem of the Man God, by Maria Valtorta, the Italian mystic, who saw scenes of the Bible, the New Testament, during the 1940s. So, like I said in the last video, that Jesus tells them to find him something to ride on, and they find him a little donkey, and it seems to be a virginal donkey. Nobody has ever used it to ride on it because it's still quite small, and to what she saw, Jesus seems to have been quite tall, so that must have been very interesting to behold. And then she sees that people, how people are starting to walk around and behind Jesus and the disciples in a sort of procession, and they throw branches on the ground, and then there's a man who gets fully inspired and he throws his mantle on the road, and as if it's a carpet, and that inspires lots of them to do the same, and so basically the whole road becomes what she called a multicolored strip of garments spread on the ground. And then when Jesus has passed, they pick up their coat and run along the donkey again, and they wave flowers, and they throw flowers, and the palm leaves that, for those of you who are Christian, the palm leaves that are always one of the symbols for Palm Easter. And that's where the name comes from too, that they have picked all these palm leaves or picked them up from the floor. But what's also interesting is that the soldiers, the Roman soldiers who are keeping guard at the gates of Jerusalem, are watching this. And it says they're very amazed because they say this is quite a strange procession, and these people are shouting that this man is the king. And what kind of king is that? On the one hand, he is riding a very small donkey, but at the same time, they somehow comment among each other, he's handsome as a god, and they know him, and they say he's humble as the poorest of man, meek, and he's a blessing, and he's surrounded by women and children and by disarmed men. And the soldiers hear them shout, peace, peace. And then at one point, that whole strange procession stops at what is called the sepulchres, the graves of the lepers at Hinnom and Siloam, because, people who had leprosy had to leave the community and had to live outside the community, so they often lived among the graves. And so Jesus stops and he stands up and he blesses all the lepers. And he says, let those who have faith in me invoke my name and receive health from it. In other words, all the lepers who believe in him, he heals them on the spot. And then he says to Judas, you need to go buy food for them and then bring it to them before it gets dark. So then when the procession goes on and people are singing hosannas and they're throwing flowers, and by the way, they're pouring perfume on the road, and they try to throw perfume on Jesus. So it's really a bewildering scenes of perfumes, smells, shouts, branches, colors, flowers, people crying of joy, and that goes into Jerusalem. But what is interesting is, first of all, the reaction of the Pharisees and the scribes, of the Jewish leaders who feel that their position is being threatened by Jesus. They are livid with rage, says Valtorta, because of this triumph. And they elbow their way through the circle of love that is pressing around Jesus, and they shout to him, make these mad people keep quiet. Make them reason. Hosannas are to be sung to God alone. Tell them to be quiet. And then Jesus said, even if I told them to be silent and they obeyed me, they the rest of the world, the stones would sing the hallelujahs for God. And so then she talks about everything that the people are singing and shouting, Hosanna, Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna to him, to his kingdom. God is with us. Emmanuel has come. The kingdom of the Christ of the Lord has come. Hosanna, Hosanna, from the earth to the highest heaven, and so on and so on. And so then people come out carrying huge braziers, copper braziers full of charcoal and incense. And so that is supposed to, let's say, purify the air, and people all get inspired by that and follow their example. So this was quite an interesting scene. I am now going to stop here, and I'm going to the next scene that then is shown, which is where Jesus ends up at the temple and starts to clear out the temple from the merchants with their merchandise. So this was Nelly, Ordinary People, Saintly Souls, summarizing for you scenes that Maria Valtorta saw about Jesus, Jesus's entry, festive entry into Jerusalem, on the day called now Palm Sunday. And I hope to see you next time. Bye.